What's going on, guys? Overman back again, and today we're going to talk about Rise of Iron. And to be honest with you, I'm actually a little bit disappointed with Rise of Iron. You see, I actually thought that Rise of Iron was just going to be the Taken King 2, and instead of fighting Taken, we fight Siva. But that's actually not the case, because in a few ways, Rise of Iron is actually a step backwards from the Taken King. And where this is most apparent is in the story, because it's definitely a notch below the quality of the Taken King's story, which I didn't even think was all that impressive. So basically, Lord Saladin will give you the rundown about what happened to the Iron Lords and tell you that you have to stop Siva and yada yada yada. Much like the previous expansions, in Rise of Iron, you get the most basic version of the story, while the much better and more complex story is in the Grimoire. But unlike the Taken King, there isn't much banter between characters. In fact, there's hardly any dialogue between characters at all. The only people that you'll hear from in the story are Lord Saladin, his buddy Shiro, and Nolanbot, and none of them are interesting. Sure, hearing about the Iron Lords and Siva was cool for a little bit, but Lord Saladin himself just comes off as boring, which sucks because he's the main character of this expansion. But on the somewhat bright side, you won't have to deal with him for too long because the campaign is really short. I mean, it's only like 5 missions and they're over pretty damn quick. And those missions aren't really anything special either. It's not like the Taken King where you had a few missions where they mix things up, like the one where you're invisible and you gotta make your way through the Crota Raid to steal his essence or some shit, or the one where a bunch of high level enemies spawn in and you gotta get the hell out of there because they're way too strong to fight. In Rise of Iron, you just go where they tell you to and you kill all the bad guys. It's almost like they forgot what made the Taken King's campaign such a step above Destiny's Year 1 missions. If I had to say something nice about the campaign, I'd say that the production value of the cutscenes were pretty good, and the final mission was pretty decent, but overall, the campaign was pretty fucking whack. And speaking of whack, let's talk about the all-new patrol area, the Plaguelands. It's nice to look at for a little bit. There's snow and Siva stuff all over the damn place, but you quickly realize that it's just like all the other patrol areas. It's dead. The same groups of enemies spawn over and over again in the same places, and worst of all, there just isn't much to do. For the most part, you'll go into the Plaguelands for 2 things. 1, public events, because there's that bounty that asks you to complete public events in the Plaguelands, and thankfully, the rewards for public events have been buffed. You'll get 15 marks and 1 legendary engram for your first public event on each character, which is pretty darn good. And right here, I want to make a point to Bungie, even though they're probably not watching. This right here is how you get people to play more. Not by making drop rates really low so that we grind for hours and hours, but by giving players incentives to come back. So good rewards like this. So on this front, good job, Bungie. But let me not give you too much praise, because now we gotta talk about the second thing that you'll be doing in the Plaguelands, which is Archon's Forge. It's pretty similar to Court of Oryx. You'll have to load into the new patrol area and ride over there on your Sparrow. Then you or someone else will have to use a Siva offering to summon some bad guys. In Archon's Forge, you'll have 5 minutes to clear the event, and there will be 2 waves of enemies. The first wave will be a bunch of minions, and the second wave you'll have to fight the boss. The difficulty of the event depends on the offering that you use. The easiest is the green, which is the fused Siva offering. Then there's the blue, which is the enhanced offering, and the highest difficulty is the purple, which is the perfected Siva offering. And I think that when it works, Archon's Forge can be a decent game mode. You know, it's not going to be something that you're going to cream your pants over, but you know, it's something to do and it can be decently fun. Archon's Forge is at its best when you have a lot of people in there. I think the most amount of people that you can have is like 7 or 8, and it's definitely better to have more people, especially if you're doing the higher difficulties. When you've got a good amount of people in there, it's pretty cool because you'll have people popping off supers and using the axe and firing Galahorns, and you can really steamroll the content when you got a large group of players. But it's not only fun to have a large group in Forge, it's also practical, because you can only hold 1 of each Siva offering at a time, so 1 person can have at a maximum of 3 offerings. But most people won't have 3, because despite the increased drop rate of offerings, it's still rare that someone is going to have more than 2 offerings at one time. So by having a large group in the Forge, you can have more time to allow for offerings to drop so that your group can play for longer and stay together. Because if you only have a group of, let's say, 3 and each of you only has 1 offering, chances are after you spend those 3, you won't get any to drop, so fun time's over. And unfortunately, this is what Archon's Forge usually boils down to. Most of the time, you won't walk into Archon's Forge and see a single person, so you'll have to run back and forth, jumping into different instances to try and find a group of people, and most of the time, you're not gonna find a large group. Most of the time, you're just gonna find 2 people already in there, and you'll play with them for a couple of rounds, and then you guys will be all out of offerings, and then that's it. You're done. You can either go outside and kill enemies and wait for an offering to drop, or you can run back and forth and try to find people in the Forge who have offerings. And overall, Archon's Forge is just a fucking mess. They could have easily made this so much better and so much more accessible if they made this a match-made activity. They could drop you into a decently sized group and you guys could play for as long as you'd like. I really don't understand why Bungie wants to put content in the game that you can't properly enjoy. And as if all of that wasn't reason enough not to bother with Archon's Forge, wait till you hear this. If you put in a perfected Siva offering, which is the highest difficulty in Archon's Forge, you are not guaranteed loot if you complete it. In fact, no matter which offering you use, you ain't guaranteed shit. The loot is completely random, just like the Crucible loot. And because of all of this shit, I don't even bother going into Archon's Forge because I have to spend so long running back and forth, trying to find other players in the Forge. And then when I finally get a group, we play like 2 rounds, and we barely get shit because the drop rates for the good stuff is incredibly low, and you aren't guaranteed any rewards anyways. But you know what? If we're gonna talk about rewards, we gotta talk about probably the most rewarding activity in Destiny history. And this really took me by surprise because Bungie is known for being super stingy with the loot, but in Iron Banner, legendary loot was dropping left and right. It seems like at the end of every match, regardless if your team wins or not, on average, 2 to 3 people are gonna get legendary drops, but sometimes it's more than that. I've personally seen up to 5 people get legendary drops after 1 match, and sometimes I've seen people get 2 legendary drops at the same time. Now another way you can get loot is from the new bounties. The old Iron Banner bounties were pretty annoying to get done, but these new bounties are pretty simple because basically you just have to play like you normally would and then you'll get them done pretty quick because there aren't any bounties that require anything special from you. Like in year 2 Iron Banner, there was part of one bounty that required you to go on a 10 kill streak, and then there was one that required you to get the top overall score, and while these things are doable for even an average skilled player like myself, it's still really freaking annoying to do. These new bounties just require you to get kills with your abilities, weapons, and finish matches. The stronger players will finish these bounties pretty quickly, but even if you're a scrub, you can get these done. And when you do get them done, you get some pretty decent rewards too. Some of these bounties will reward you with Iron Banner armor, and some of them will give you weapons. Now, the final way you can get loot is by ranking up. When you first go to Aphrodite, she'll give you a quest which will tell you to hit rank 3 and 5, and you'll get some gear when you hit each rank. Now, I'm wondering if this quest is going to be a one-time thing, or if we're going to get this quest every time Iron Banner comes back, but you know what? Loot drops so often that it wouldn't be a big deal if this quest was a one-time thing. I mean, I can't even tell you how many legendaries I got from Iron Banner. I lost track. I used so many of them for infusion, I equipped a bunch of them, I dismantled some of them because like I just had too many. So the rewards in Iron Banner are pretty freaking dope. And you know, I'm really thankful that the loot is so good in Iron Banner because it's the only thing that I enjoyed while playing. Because the game mode for the last Iron Banner was of course the newest PvP game mode in Destiny, Supremacy. Basically, it's kill confirmed from Call of Duty. Now personally, I think that kill confirmed works pretty well in COD, but Jesus fucking Christ, I hate Supremacy in Destiny. I'll admit, my first game or two of Supremacy, I enjoyed a little bit, but I quickly found out how hollow of a game mode it really is. Basically, everyone just runs around blinking and shotgunning, and that's about it. Now look, I'm not hating on shotgunning. I think shotgunning is fine, in moderation. If any one game mode promotes one type of gun over all else, I'm not gonna be happy, and that's the problem with Supremacy. I don't blame people for using shotguns so much because honestly, it's one of the best ways to play. If you're in range to kill someone with a shotty, then you'll probably be able to pick up their crest. And you know what makes the problem even worse? The maps. Especially the newer maps. A lot of the newer maps that Bungie has added with the last couple of DLCs have these super tight areas that are just begging for shotguns to be used. The best example has got to be the new map Last last exit. It's the train station map. If you played Supremacy on this map, you know everyone just funnels into that middle area and it turns into a crapshoot. And the thing is, Supremacy doesn't even play to Destiny's strengths. In my and many other people's opinion, Destiny is at its very best when two people are having a firefight using primaries, because most of the primaries are gonna require you to land some headshots to kill in a decent amount of time. And this is really fun and really rewarding, and because it's so much fun, ever since year one, people have been asking for a primary only game mode, and unfortunately, Bungie has basically given us the opposite. And on top of the rampant shotgunning, I had probably some of the worst spawns ever in Destiny. I mean, I would get spawned across the map from my team right next to like 3 enemies. And I'm not the only one either, because I saw people saying the same thing on the forums. While I was playing Iron Banner, I was just thinking to myself, how the hell did they not test for this? And if they did, how the hell didn't they fix this before the release? Because it seems like such a basic thing. You spawn people near their teammates. But whatever. Let's move back to PvE, because we got 2 new strikes. Well, actually 1 new strike and 1 reskin strike. The new strike will have you kill baddies until you make it to the boss area, where you'll find the shittiest mechanic in any strike ever. It's an ogre. And I know what you're thinking, an ogre isn't a mechanic overman, it's an enemy. Well, not when you can't kill it. That's right, there's an invincible ogre in this strike, and the real boss is some fallen guy. And I just don't like this strike. It's a super small area, and there isn't much cover. And when you do get behind cover, the invincible ogre will just walk over to you and flush you out, and then the boss will melt your face. This strike is annoying as hell because you just end up running around, mindlessly jumping around to avoid enemies so that you can put a few shots into the boss and just repeat the process. There isn't any strategy or tactics involved. It's just whack and it's poorly designed. I think it would have been a lot more interesting if you had to kill both the ogre and the fallen guy. And since this strike can be pretty tough on higher difficulties, it would have been nice if a captain would come out with one of those guns that you can pick up, you know, just to give us some extra firepower. Or maybe they could have made it so that it's a 2-part fight, so you have to kill the ogre first, and then the fallen guy comes out because he's super pissed because you killed his ogre. I don't know, let me know what you think. I think they should have done it differently because it just doesn't work right now. Right now it's just not very enjoyable. But thankfully I do have some nice things to say about the content in Rise of Iron, because I do have to talk about the raid. Even though I can't say too much about it since I only got to play it once on someone else's account, but it was still a very enjoyable experience. I want to go out on a limb and say that this raid will be kinder to LFG groups than something like King's Fall was, because it seems like Wrath of the Machine is a little bit more forgiving. But it is still challenging and fun like a raid should be, and I definitely look forward to playing it again on my own account. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's the same old, same old. As usual, the raid is great, which is good. But the problem is, and has always been, that the rest of the PvE content really doesn't measure up to the quality of the raid at all. And that sucks because you're gonna have to grind the strikes over and over and over again just to get geared up enough to do the raid. I mean, the strikes are the meat and potatoes of the PvE content because you can only do the raid, what, 3 times per week maximum? So you're gonna be grinding a strike playlist with a bunch of strikes that you've already grinded the hell out of in year 2 just so you can do the raid? And while the raid is great, it's gonna get old just like the other raids. And sure, if you're in a PvP, you've got Trials and you got Iron Banner, but that's nothing new either. So what are you really paying for? A handful of content that isn't even that good, plus 1 piece of content that's pretty good but inaccessible to the majority of players? It just doesn't seem worth it to me. I wouldn't say that Rise of Iron is total garbage, but I will say that it's pretty mediocre, and for $30, it could have been a lot better. No. It should have been a lot better. But that's it for this one though, guys. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to smash that like button. If you're not feeling shy, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think about Rise of Iron. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter. Link in the description box below. That's it for me though, guys. Over me.